Life is not fair. It never was. It never will be. And strong men know this. They don't complain about it. They don't wait for it to change. They just adapt. Weak men wait for perfect conditions. Strong men create conditions. Weak men explain why they can't. Strong men figure out how they can. Weak men make excuses. Strong men make progress. Stay with me. This one decision decides your future. Let's talk about the excuse mindset. Excuses feel logical. That's the trap. When you make an excuse, it sounds reasonable. It sounds like a valid explanation for why you didn't perform, why you didn't execute, why you didn't follow through. I didn't have time. That sounds logical. I was too tired. That sounds reasonable. The situation wasn't ideal. That sounds fair. But there's still excuses. And excuses, no matter how logical they sound, still produce the same result. Nothing. Blame is comfortable. It protects your ego. It lets you avoid responsibility. When you blame circumstances, you don't have to look at yourself. You don't have to admit that maybe you could have tried harder, adjusted faster, prepared better. You get to stay innocent, stay blameless, stay comfortable, but you also stay stuck. Because blame doesn't fix anything. It just makes you feel better about not fixing it. Weakness hides behind reasons. It dresses itself up as logic, as fairness, as circumstances beyond your control. But underneath all of that, it's still weakness. The inability to push through, the unwillingness to adapt, the choice to protect your ego instead of produce results. And the longer you make excuses, the weaker you become. Because every time you choose an excuse over action, you reinforce a pattern. You train yourself to quit, to avoid, to retreat, until quitting becomes your default. Avoiding becomes automatic. Retreating becomes who you are. Excuses destroy growth completely. Because growth requires action. And excuses are designed to justify inaction. You can't improve while you're making excuses. You can't build while you're blaming. You can't evolve while you're explaining why you can't. Excuses kill progress. They stop momentum before it starts. You have a goal. You encounter an obstacle. And instead of adapting, you make an excuse. And that excuse becomes the reason you don't move forward. The reason you stay where you are. The reason nothing changes. Excuses delay action. They buy you time. Time to stay comfortable. Time to avoid discomfort. Time to protect yourself from the risk of trying and failing. But that delay is expensive. Because every day you delay action is a day someone else is executing, adapting, improving. And while you're explaining why you can't, they're figuring out how they can. Excuses protect ego instead of results. That's their real function. When you make an excuse, you preserve your self-image. You get to believe you're still capable. You just had bad circumstances, bad timing, bad luck. But capability without execution is worthless. Potential without action is meaningless. Results are what matter, and excuses produce no results. So what's the alternative? The adaptive mindset. The mindset of strong men. Strong men don't complain, not because nothing bothers them, but because complaining changes nothing. They understand that circumstances don't care about their frustration. Obstacles don't move because you're upset. So they don't waste energy on emotion. They redirect it into action. They adjust immediately, without hesitation. Plan fails, new plan. Strategy doesn't work, new strategy. Path is blocked, new path. They don't sit in the problem. They move through it. They solve problems fast. Not because they're smarter, but because they don't waste time on excuses. While weak men are explaining why something won't work, strong men are testing solutions. While weak men are waiting for perfect conditions, strong men are adapting to current conditions. While weak men are protecting their ego, strong men are producing results. That's the difference. Not talent, not luck, not circumstances, just the willingness to take responsibility and adapt. Responsibility over emotion. Always. You're responsible for your results, not your circumstances, not your feelings. You. And when you accept that, truly accept that, everything changes. Because you stop waiting for things to get easier. You stop blaming external factors. You stop making excuses. You just adapt. Because that's what responsible people do. Adaptation under pressure. This is where strength is forged. Anyone can execute when conditions are perfect, when they're rested, when they're motivated, when everything is aligned. But strong men execute when conditions are terrible, when they're exhausted, when nothing is going right. They adjust plans when things fail. Not later. Not after they've processed their feelings. Immediately. Failure is just data. It tells you what doesn't work. So you adjust, you iterate, you try something else. No emotion, no drama, just adaptation. Staying composed when tired. This is critical. Fatigue makes weak men emotional. It makes them reactive. It makes them quit. But strong men stay composed. They recognize that being tired doesn't change what needs to be done. It just makes it harder. So they adjust their approach. They slow down if needed. They simplify if needed. But they don't stop. Because stopping doesn't solve the problem. Adapting does. Learning instead of quitting. When something doesn't work, weak men see failure. Strong men see feedback. Weak men take it personally. Strong men take it as information. This approach didn't work. What can I learn from this? What can I adjust? That's the mindset. That's the strength. That's what separates progress from stagnation. Discipline over comfort. Every single time. Comfort creates excuses. It makes you soft. It lowers your tolerance for difficulty. When you prioritize comfort, every obstacle feels insurmountable. Every challenge feels unfair. Every setback feels like a reason to quit. Because you've trained yourself to believe that comfort is the default. That ease is normal. That struggle means something is wrong. But that's a lie. Struggle is normal. Difficulty is expected. Resistance is where growth happens. Discipline creates solutions. It forces you to think, to adapt, to execute regardless of how you feel. When you're disciplined, you don't need perfect conditions. You work with what you have. You don't need ideal circumstances. You adapt to current circumstances. You don't need to feel ready. You just start and adjust as you go. Progress requires discomfort, non-negotiable. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. You're maintaining at best, declining at worst. Growth lives in the space just beyond your current capacity. In the challenge, in the resistance, in the discomfort. And strong men live there. Not because they enjoy it, but because they understand that's where strength is built. Control is power. Not control over circumstances. Control over yourself, over your reactions, over your emotions, over your decisions. When you have self-control, external chaos doesn't break you. It just becomes another variable to adapt to. When you lack self-control, every obstacle feels personal. Every setback feels devastating. Every challenge feels overwhelming. But when you're controlled, you stay logical. You stay focused. You stay adaptive. Mental strength training happens in real time. Under pressure, under stress, under difficulty. You train it by controlling your reactions, by choosing logic over emotion, by staying calm when everything says panic. Someone disrespects you. You don't react. You respond. Calmly. Strategically. Something breaks. You don't spiral. You adapt. Immediately. Plans fail. You don't complain. You adjust. Fast. That's training. That's strength. That's the mindset that wins. Staying logical under stress. This is the skill. Stress makes weak men emotional. It clouds their judgment. It makes them reactive. But strong men stay logical. They separate feeling from thinking. They feel the stress, but they don't let it control their decisions. They acknowledge the emotion, but they don't let it dictate their actions. They stay focused on the problem, on the solution, on what needs to happen next. Turning setbacks into data. This is the reframe. A setback is not a failure. It's information. It tells you what doesn't work, what needs adjustment, what to avoid next time. When you view setbacks as data, they lose their emotional weight. They're no longer devastating. They're just feedback. And feedback makes you better if you use it. You stop explaining yourself, because explanations are for people who need approval. You're not seeking approval. You're seeking results. So when something doesn't work, you don't explain why. You just adapt and try again. When someone questions your approach, you don't defend it. You evaluate whether it's working and adjust if needed. You stop blaming situations, because blame is irrelevant. The situation is what it is. Complaining doesn't change it. Blaming doesn't fix it. Only adaptation changes outcomes. Only action produces results. So you skip the blame. You skip the explanation. You go straight to adaptation. You adapt or you fall behind. That's the reality. The world doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Competition doesn't pause while you make excuses. Either you adapt to changing conditions or you become obsolete. Either you solve problems faster than they appear or you drown in them. Either you take responsibility and execute, or you get left behind. That's not motivational. That's just reality. And strong men accept reality. They don't fight it. They don't resent it. They just adapt to it. Excuses feel safe. Adaptation builds winners. One protects your ego. The other produces results. One keeps you comfortable. The other makes you capable. One is easy in the moment. The other compounds into strength. Choose wisely, because that choice, made repeatedly, becomes your identity. The standard you live by is simple, clear, unbreakable. No excuses. Not ever. Not when you're tired. Not when conditions are bad. Not when things go wrong. You don't make excuses. You make adjustments. Fast adaptation. Not eventually. Not when you feel like it. Immediately. Something doesn't work. Adjust. Plan fails. New plan. Obstacle appears. New path. Fast, decisive, no hesitation. Results over feelings, always. You don't care if it feels hard. You care if it works. You don't care if it's uncomfortable. You care if it produces outcomes. You don't care if you feel like doing it. You care if it needs to be done. Feelings are information, not instructions. Results are what matter, and results come from adaptation, not excuses. These standards are non-negotiable. They define who you are. You're not someone who makes excuses. You're someone who adapts. You're not someone who blames circumstances. You're someone who overcomes them. You're not someone who waits for perfect conditions. You're someone who creates momentum in any condition. That's your identity. That's your strength. That's what makes you dangerous. Not in a violent way, in a capable way. You can't be stopped by obstacles because you adapt. You can't be broken by setbacks because you learn. You can't be defeated by circumstances because you take responsibility and execute anyway. And that capability, that adaptive strength, is what separates winners from everyone else. Not talent, not luck. Not advantages, just the refusal to make excuses, and the commitment to adapt instead. So when life hits you with problems, and it will, you don't collapse. You don't complain. You don't make excuses. You don't wait for rescue. You adapt. You adjust. You execute calmly, quickly, effectively, and you keep moving forward, not because the path is clear, but because you're capable of clearing it. That's strength, that's power, that's who you are now. Someone who doesn't make excuses, someone who adapts, someone who wins, not through perfect conditions, through superior adaptability, not through luck, through discipline. Not through talent, through relentless problem solving. And that makes you unstoppable. Not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing can stop you from adapting. Comment adapt if you choose growth over excuses.